Right. All right. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to see everyone here. Welcome to Incorporating AI in Social Science Research. Um, I'm Brendan O'Connor. I'm faculty in computer science and one of the co-directors of the Computational Social Science Institute. Also here is our other co-director, Krista Guile, who is somewhere.
Oh, she ran for
Oh,
fourth.
she ran. And she'll be back up momentarily in math and statistics, and also our associate director, Kelsey Shope, in public policy. And we're excited to convene a lot of people from across many different departments for this area. And just speaking personally, like once upon a time, I was in graduate school, and like I had a blog that no one read, but it was entitled AI and Social Science. So I think it's a great idea. But it has been so exciting seeing more interest in this area and all sorts of folks getting interested in from all sorts of different perspectives. And so we hope to talk about some of this today, and I'll hand it over to Kelsey.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I am going to be running essentially the timer for the event and making sure everyone's roughly on time. Um, Before we launch in, I will say if at any point you want to get up and get some food, get something to drink, go for it. It's in the back corner where everyone is standing in line, you know, as happens at these events. So today, the goal here is going to be to connect, get inspired, and find some resources, potentially either for your own research or to connect with folks that are doing this research already on campus. To that end, we're going to start with 4 lightning talks. By lightning talks, we mean it's going to be a 5-minute presentation, so we're not getting into like the nitty-gritty necessarily of what everyone's doing in their research, but rather give you enough of a flavor to give you some inspiration for your research and potentially to some folks to reach out to for some conversations. After each of those, if anyone has some questions or comments, we'll collect some number of questions and comments, give the speakers a chance to respond, and then move on. Order's up on the screen, so if you want to take a picture so that you know who you might want to reach out to later, go ahead. After those research talks, we're going to have some information about opportunities to engage in a bunch of different ways at UMass, because we have a bunch of different ways at UMass to actually engage with AI this year. Those are going to range from the Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence, who are one of the all 4 of us are co-hosting this event, because they're doing an accelerator program this year to help people find funding, essentially, that's for projects that are using AI. The College of Social and Behavioral Sciences are doing a series of talks, workshops, and interactive events this year. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that, hear a little bit about ISSR's programming, and then us from the Computational Social Science Institute are going to close it out. So with that, we have our first set of research in AI for social science talks, which I'm very excited to hear from Virginia Patridge and Joe Patter.
Thanks. Joe is going to start. I'll give him a microphone.
I forgot to check whether the sound is working. Will it work, do you think?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
We'll see. Okay. So we've all seen in one way or another how good speech recognition has gotten. And the goal of our project is to harness the technology underlying speech recognition to do linguistics. We're interested in studying the varieties of English, the sound patterns and varieties of English. And the way that we're harnessing speech recognition technology is by creating a model for automated phonetic transcription. So the International Phonetic Alphabet represents the sounds of speech unambiguously. So the orthography that you see there could either be pronounced either or either. So there are 2 phonetic transcriptions for it. And then when we have ambiguous orthography, there'd be a single phonetic transcription for the word meat. It's used in a wide range of areas. And the success of current speech recognition models has inspired people to do work in automated IPA transcription. But there's been very little application of it for a variety of reasons, I think. We could talk about that more in the question period. The training data, we're training a wave, we're fine-tuning a wave-to-vec model on data from the Buckeye corpus. This is a very large corpus of phonetically transcribed speech from one variety of American English, a variety spoken in the area of Columbus. This is an example of phonetic transcription, and we'll see if we can play the sound. Maybe not. It says where the trees were mature and they didn't really cut the development something. The large trees at the very end of it.
You can try and plug it in. You click on it.
That's fine. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Let's continue so we don't waste too much time.
So how do you actually get these phonetic transcriptions out of an AI model? We're using a Wave2Vec2 model, which I'll explain at the very high level. But the first step is pre-training. So you get a lot of audio data, and at this point, you don't even need transcriptions yet, just a lot of audio. And a Wave2Vec model architecture, Wave2Vec2 model architecture consists of 3 components, which I won't get into in detail, but you can come talk to me if you're interested later. But the first layer is a convolutional layer. It divides up your audio into very short time segments, and that's a snapshot of what's happening in the audio at that time period. You also add a transformer layer, which takes into account the relative positions of time. So this sound happens before that sound. And these are combined through a process called self-supervised learning. You're hiding the numerical representation of one sound and using the other sounds around it to predict what it should be. So researchers typically do this in advance and then release their models publicly for anyone to use. And then we get to take them and do fine tuning and take our audio transcriptions. We are trying to basically maximize the probability of the right transcription. And because your tiny time segments, those snapshots of audio, might be shorter or longer than the actual sound that the person said, you have to calculate the probabilities of all these different alignments of the sounds and find the right one. Okay, so why do we even care about this? Well, pre-trained and fine-tuned models can be released and reused by anyone. And they can even be further fine-tuned. So if you have a particular variety of English or dialect that you're interested in, you could take our model and fine-tune it further. We also found that you don't need a lot of high-quality transcribed data for fine-tuning to get good performance. So for our performance metric, we're using phone error rate. I'm not going to get into detail. It's a rate, lower is better. And we found that with 1,600 samples, which corresponded to about an hour of training data from Buckeye. It's that purple dot on the first one that's sort of low down. That gets us pretty good performance. So we were really pleased to see that.
Oh, my turn.
Yeah.
So to begin to get a sense of how well our model does on other varieties of English, we used PIMIT as a test corpus. This is speech from speakers of 7 dialects plus Army brats. And this is our model against some other available models. We're not too surprised to see that our model is doing better since it's been trained on a better corpus of English. But what kind of surprised us is that there weren't big differences amongst the dialects for our model. So it was trained on, I can't see. Oh yeah, so it was trained on the North Midland variety, but it's doing, there's some that it does equally well with, and it doesn't do much worse on any of the varieties. The next steps, we have a model that we're thinking is working very well. And it's been implemented on the web. You can use prot text grids. These are prot text grids right here. And so you can upload your audio with the text grids and then get the phonetic transcriptions right there. This one, I'm really sad that we can't play the audio here. This is audio for a man who was born in 1910, 20 miles from here in North Dana, in a town that doesn't exist anymore because it's underneath the Quabbin. And his speech is really striking. And I would have been able to show you a couple things. For example, he says "lodge." He sounds basically like someone from Eastern Massachusetts. And so we're getting some of the details of his speech already, but the exact vowel qualities we're not getting. And so we're going to be fine tuning our model to see how it does on his speech. And so, yeah, we'd like to thank all the funding has come internally at UMass so far for this work, and really appreciate it. And also, I just want to mention, I'm the co-director of I'm an interloper from HFA, And I'm the co-director of the AI and Emerging Technologies Committee. And we had a set of lightning talks ourselves in the spring. And I just wanted to let you know that there's lots of interest in this area over there as well. So thanks. We'd be happy for any questions you have.
We do have time for a couple questions if anyone wants.
So the continuous vectors could represent positions in between some of the different phonetic symbols. And
Oh,
is that of interest on the linguistic side?
yes, right. Right, that's a great point, and I don't think we've thought about exploring that, right? So you could even think about like what a prototypical vowel would be, and look at the prototype and look at the variation around them, and then also think about things that are in between two of the symbols that you have. So we have a relatively limited symbol set, and it won't represent it. So maybe looking at, yeah, that's a great point.
Linguistics would accept doing the analysis in the raw latent space and not even looking at the phonetics.
There has been some work. So
Yeah.
we presented this work at the annual meeting of phonology at their what was the workshop called? Deep
Phonology.
Presentation that looked at if you could isolate features related to, so right, this is very linguistics in detailed, but like vowels can be pronounced in the back of your mouth or in the front of your mouth. And these are specific linguistic features that people have isolated. And there was a presentation there where they looked at if you could use a wave-to-vec model to somehow isolate those features in the latent space. So there is some work being done on it. I think I'm excited about that opportunity. I think there's some interesting things we could do. And yeah, there's other people.
And there is other work that actually doesn't use the linguistic symbols, and work on how native-like second language speech is, and they're getting quite good results in abandoning the symbols. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your very exciting work with us.
Thank you.
Cool. And so next up, we have Brenda Bushouse and Santiago from Public Policy and Political Science coming up to give the next talk.
So this is a project that involves our sister campus, UC Davis, our colleagues there, who were on an NSF grant together, a growing convergence research grant. And so we wish they could be here today, but they're all the way across the country. So I'm Brenda Bushouse. I'm in the School of Public Policy, and
I'm Santiago. I'm a PhD candidate in political science.
yes, and we've been working together on 2 different NSF grants now for how many years?
3 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, and been a lot of fun. So an earlier NSF grant was focused on getting a network of people who are using the institutional grammar. And so this is a really versatile tool. It's interesting that we're following linguistics because this is a tool for coding rules, norms, and strategies. So as policy researchers and as law researchers, we often want to look at text, and it can be very laborious to go through all the text. So this was a way created in 1995 by Eleanor Ostrom and Sue Crawford originally, but wasn't really used all that much. But then we got a grant and created the Institutional Grammar Research Initiative. And now we have quite a community of people who are doing the, who are using the IG. So here's the different areas where it's being applied. We have comparative institutional analysis because you code it into these 6 different components. So it makes it really easy for comparative analysis of policy documents. And then we can look at coerciveness and rule performance. We also doing a lot with network analysis, using the institutional grammar and those network tools. And then this one's really nice too, because we have advances in, we code the rules, but then we also have advances in coding natural language speech, people are talking about it, how do they actually use the rules? And so we can compare that and see if people are actually following the rules. But first, we have to start with institutions just because it all starts with an institutional statement, and it's a very different definition than common use of the term institution. So we just wanted to say, this is defined as rules, norms, and strategies. Okay, when they permit, require, or prohibit actions, and then it's in time and space and procedural boundaries. Okay, and then, so I study nonprofit organizations. So just some typical institutions that we would be looking at is the non-distribution constraint. You can make profit, but you've got to reinvest it into the organization. Private foundations have to give out 5% of their assets in grants every year. And then we've got nonprofits that have tax exemptions. So we would be studying those institutions, set of institutional statements. So I look at bylaws, statutes, we've looked at regulations. We're going to talk about some state law data. We can also do informal analysis of norms and strategies. So this is the institutional grammar. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into it, but these are the components of how we code the rules, norms, and strategies. And so we'll go into an example. I don't want to spend the time on that. There we go. So here's an example. We did a study of the states on the rules about how you dissolve a nonprofit and over time. Okay, so this is one in which, do you want to keep going down? There we go. So it's just, this is how we would have hand coded it. Oh boy, hand coded it. And so let me speed up so I can get to, I'm going to actually turn it over to Santiago now.
Okay, so you have like a brief glaze over like the how to code this. But basically, this is so labor expensive. It is time consuming. I mean, it's good for grad students like me. So you get the stipend and code this. But of course, if you have limited resources, it's really difficult to do this. So our solution was using semantic role labeling to this, specifically because like previous approaches try to use the grammatical structure of a sentence to actually map those ID components. So imagine the verb, the noun, right, the qualifiers, and just map those to the ID components. So the verb would be the aim, the deontic, like you just map that to the grammatical structure. But then you have the problem that we don't speak in institutional statements, right? You have passive voice, you have undetermined nouns. So for instance, a corporation will be dissolved, but it could be it will be dissolved, right? So it is difficult to map to this specific ID components using just the grammatical structure. So we use semantic role labeling that basically uses different arguments on those sentences, and specifically the root around, like the root of those arguments are the action, and then you see what's happening around the action in those sentences to actually identify the agent in this case, or the patient or the recipient of those actions in different like configurations of sentences. We apply this to different rules on involuntary dissolution on 47 states. You can find like the F1 scores here. The standard is hand coding after months and months and like reaching a consensus among like different researchers. So that's the standard where we compare the automated tool against the hand coding. And here, like you can find a summary. We can talk more about it. The important part I would say is we, and specifically our colleague from UC Davis, Mahasweta Chakraborty, developed an NLP for Gov tool that you can all use. So it is a notebook in Google Colab where it requires minimum coding and it provides instructions about how to pre-process your data. That requires minimum work. So you can use it and you can parse this kind of institutions, formal, informal institutions, into this structure and analyzing for public policy. So this is available for all of you, and happy to answer more questions on that. Thank you.
You were gonna.
So if there are any questions or comments, we have time to either collect a few or maybe answer one or two. Homer?
Thank you for presenting this. And my question is, this feels to me like it would be a good use case for directly just putting it into a standard commercial LLM and asking it, basically giving an explanation about what you're trying to do and then trying it that way. Do you think, have you tried it, or do you think that would work, or do you think that's just too costly in terms of, running a large model? Like, what advantage does this approach offer over that?
Do you want to go back to this slide?
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, like I don't want to like go over this as kind of the advantages, but we actually are trying to train LLMs to do this, and specifically in the context of institutional change and the sources of institutional change. So we are organizing analyzing an organization which has like a set of rules. We have identified changes over like on those rules over a certain time, and then we're trying to identify what are the sources, for instance, like the board discussions or emails from different actors. So what's the source of those specific changes that we see in the formal policy? And that's where we are using the LLMs, trying to train them to find those on those conversational data, basically, and the emails and the board minutes from these board discussions. So we're trying to see if they actually help us to capture on those informal settings this kind of rules. That's the use that we have done in terms of like LLMs. But I think, yes, you can scale this to use it like in general, use this kind of tool. I don't know if that answers the question.
So with the semantic role labeling, this looks like the prop bank style semantic roles, which in my field are kind of close to syntax. I mean, they abstract over syntax to some extent, like with passive, but still kind of syntax like. So do you have to, and what you want is something much more on the pragmatic side, right? So do you have to add something on top of the semantic roles in order to get the mapping right?
It's a map. Let me find the slide, because what happens, it's so for the institutional grammar syntax, there's 6 components. So the semantic role labeling can do 4 at 93% accuracy. But if we want to ask a question, like there's more complexity that you can do for context, the semantic role labeling can't do it. So you'd still have to hand code, and it doesn't do the OR statements. So depending on your research question, this might work, and it may be just sufficient if you only need the semantic ABD elements. But for like the example that we showed here, there's actually a statement with a context that we would want to do more careful coding, which we did by hand, but we can't do that with a semantic role labeling yet. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
We're out of time.
Okay.
Then next up is Jesse Rhodes and Emma Cooper out of political science.
Well, thanks. Really glad to be here and talk a little bit about early stages of work with a great graduate student, Emma Cooper, on hostile sexism and the Joe Rogan experience. Just putting some context for this study. So hostile sexism, which I'll be talking a lot about, is a set of negative attitudes and beliefs about women that assert an adversarial relationship between men and women in society. And we know based on previous research that this attitude at the individual level is associated with increased support for Donald Trump, for greater participation among Republicans, for reduced support for reproductive rights, and greater support for political violence. And canonical theories of political behavior suggest that elite communications can influence ordinary people's attitudes and authorize attitudes, including those that historically have been seen as violating norms. And so what we wanted to do in this study is just start to take a look at what the prevalence of hostile sexism is in elite communications, and that might provide us with a basis for understanding the salience of hostile sexist attitudes in contemporary American politics at the mass level. And so we decided for this project, and Emma deserves a lot of credit for this, to focus as a start on the Joe Rogan Experience. And so this is an extraordinarily popular podcast that has broader reach than a lot of conventional mainstream media. And its top episodes receive tens of millions of views. The average episode gets more views than the NBC Nightly News or Fox News. And Joe Rogan is an interesting figure because he routinely brings on guests that have histories of either making offensive statements or actually have histories of alleged credible allegations of sexual assault or sexual harassment. And the JRE is at the center of the so-called online manoverse. And so we thought we might start here to take a look at how elites might authorize hostile sexism. And so to do that, we gathered the full transcripts of every single episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. And I used a dictionary of 41 keyword terms to identify every single reference to female terms within a context window or plus or minus 50 words. So we're getting kind of pseudo paragraphs, each of which contains at least one female word reference. And I should say that these are general words, so we didn't focus on hostile words. A lot of the words are very common, so female, woman, she, her, and so forth. And then this is just a pilot to get a sense of what's possible and to start to fine-tune this research moving forward before we try to scale or do anything more elaborate. And so I should also say I blame Kelsey for roping me into this on short notice. So she put me under the gun to put things together quickly. So I randomly sampled just 1,000 of these statements just to see what would happen and to get some context and assess the viability of this project at scale. And so we took 1,000 of these paragraphs and I asked Claude to rate each of these on a 1 to 5 scale from not being hostily sexist at all to being very high in hostile sexism. And this is a zero-shot task, right? So in the future, we're going to have to validate some of this automated coding and adjust things. At the bottom, we just have kind of an interesting piece of content from the Joe Rogan Experience. I don't know how many of you are frequent listeners, but there is a lot of interesting content on that podcast. And so I'm just going to show you really quickly the prompts, which we created a pretty extensive prompt which encouraged Claude, which is the AI that we used, to act as an expert in political science and political communication and content analysis. And then we explained in a fair amount of detail what hostile sexism is and its main conceptual components. And then we asked it to code each of the 1,000 segments on this 1 to 5 scale. And so just results, because I know that's what you're looking for. So overwhelmingly, the statements did not include hostile sexism, which is what you'd probably expect, given that we used a very inclusive set of terms to capture the content. However, at least in this initial analysis, about 8.8% of the captured paragraphs included at least some level of hostily sexist content. And so we found this is like a really intriguing start and something that we're going to want to continue to pursue. I should say this is part of a broader project where we're also doing qualitative content analysis of these transcripts. And so in the future, we're going to have to do a number of things. Obviously, we need to do some human work to validate the coding in some ways. We're also going to play with some alternative ways of gathering the content. And then we need to work with the programming so that it'll be viable to scale. Because again, we've captured more than 320,000 statements. So I'll stop there and take any questions. Thanks. Oh. Do I get to? Yeah, you get oh, okay. Jen. I'm, studying hostile sexism.
Questions. The one first is, why Claude as opposed to any other platform? Yep. The second one is, I'm wondering, there are probably a lot of transcripts where women aren't discussed at all or completely absent. So I'm wondering if there's a way to have a filter of the transcripts where women can come up in some way or another and then do the analysis? Or if-
Yeah. So great question. So first, I used Claude because I already had a subscription. I was using it. And so again, like this was the first step. I do think in the future, one thing that would be valuable to do would be like cross-platform validation, because that would be one way of assessing the quality of the codes. You would expect, hopefully, similar codes across statements from various platforms. And actually, your second question is really important. So we did focus on paragraphs that had a female related word, and we basically screened everything else out. But you can imagine other research designs. So we could just take a random sample of all paragraphs and just see what comes out. Actually, had a conversation earlier with Andrew, and he suggested something similar. And so I think that's something that we would want to do, and that's pretty easy and viable. So I think that might be a next step. Again, we're just trying to figure things out now, but I agree that that would be a great thing to do next. Thank you. I think Justin, did you? Yeah.
Maybe a different potentially important window, which is it matters less like what percentage of times that they mention some female word and whether that then with sexism to things like, you know, what percentage of episodes mentioning at least some threshold of women at all. First of all, knowing, yeah, like, okay, 20% of the episodes don't mention any female words at all.
Right.
Thoroughly manosphere. And then when they do mention women, 70% of those episodes contain at least some sexism.
Yep.
It can be tricky when you get down to the paragraph level with this kind of thing, at least in terms of what you're looking to, like pervasiveness of that, or being a key component of the show.
Yeah, and so one good piece of news is that even when we do things this way, we like retain the metadata as to what episode they came from. So we could do that this way, but you're right, we could go back and reverse engineer it the way that you're describing.
In part, just because like if they're starting talking about something and they say a couple of very hostile sexist things, and then they add a few other paragraphs about context and she's coming up, I don't know, you want to give them credit for being less sexist.
Right.
The whole episode is about this.
Right, fair. Yeah, and so I agree, like in terms of conceptualizing the measurement, yeah, we need to do some more thinking about that. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. Yeah. Sure.
Can you give some examples of female words or?
Yeah, so this was a dictionary set of terms from the General Enquirer, and again, so we did this for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a previous validated dictionary, and so it's a nice place to start. You know, I'm open to considering alternatives. So one thing that we may try is using dictionaries of like avowedly hostile terms, right? And so that's another possibility. But so this from the General Enquirer, it's like 41 words. They're for the most part pretty benign. There's a couple of less benign words, but you know, this was generated in like the late 50s, early 60s. So they're not including terms like this because those kinds of words, you know, wouldn't be spoken in polite company, I think, which is why they excluded them. But we know in recent years that avowedly hostile, like obviously hostile content has become very prominent, especially online. And so, you know, I think we may want to consider collecting that, at least for some subset of this work, that's focused on those more obviously hostile terms. I will say one complexity, and you know, going back to my interesting paragraph there at the bottom, is there is some complexity in this language because Joe Rogan is a comedian. I'll leave it to you as how funny you think he is, but he's a comedian and he invites on a lot of comedians. And so the way that they talk is really complicated. And I think that's an important reason why, and again, Emma deserves the credit for this, we want to couple this with qualitative content analysis to get at the nuance. Because if you take, for example, this paragraph, there's a lot going on. There is some, I think, hostile content, but it also is intentionally ironic and comedic content as well. So you'd have to think really carefully at a qualitative level how you'd want to code this content. And often one thing that we found in the Joe Rogan experience is that there will be a kind of jokiness which lends itself to a plausible deniability as to how hostile it actually is. And that's actually, I think, an intentional feature of this show, is that it enables actors to convey content that could reasonably be interpreted as hostile, but like, that's just a joke. I'm just kidding, right? Which makes things more complicated. I don't know if I'm out of time.
Yeah, I you can take Tom's question or comment, but
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you did not use the API, how did you process the data through
So I very intentionally took a very small sample. And again, for this purpose, I'm just using the chat. So it's small enough that I could just drop it in the chat and it did the work. But absolutely in the future, like once we get our act together and know exactly what we're going to do, we're going to have to process it through the API. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes. Yes, you can. And so last but not least for our research talks are Lauren McCarthy and Doug Rice, as we have issues with the mics.
That's totally my fault. I don't know how to work these things. Lauren is not here. She was trying to make it here on time. She had to do some other stuff. And so I'm really excited though to present some of this research, in part because I think this is a really good example of exactly what the group coming together here is supposed to sort of try and get after and accomplish for us all. Why Brendan was telling us all to talk to one another and meet some new friends here today. So this project starts here. And so Russia invades Ukraine in February of 2022. And Lauren is a scholar of Russia, and her work is to go and talk to people in a way that I don't do whatsoever. But she'll interview people, she'll go and do deep dives, deep qualitative dives. What that means for her research is in large part that like she's kind of cut off from being able to do that on the ground in Russia, right? And so one of the things that we are thinking of as this happens, I'm down the hall and I'm friends. And so we started talking a little bit about what was going on because we see the protests happening. We also know that Russia is increasingly like a very aggressive and a very accomplished repressive state. And so we had in real time these protests happening and a Russian response then to, on top of already existing laws to repress any sort of dissent, real-time sort of responses to try and repress a little bit further. And what those took the form of was a series of different laws, a couple of the big ones here, a criminal code 207.3, which was disseminating knowingly false information about the Russian military. But the one that we focus in on live on is the second one here, which is public activities aimed at discrediting the use of Russia's military. So what does that encompass? Well, basically using the word war is discrediting the military of Russia. It's not a war operation, it's something else. And so what did that entail? If you violated the administrative offenses, it's a $325 about fine. One of the reasons that that might seem a little bit light, but it's actually pretty close to a month's salary for average Russian. And so some of the things that popped up in our data set, wearing blue and yellow shoes, for instance, is discrediting the Russian military. Writing no war in the snow is discrediting the Russian military and other forms of source speech. They're replacing stickers on like price tags at the store. They would replace, that was also discussed, another version of discrediting the military. So we had a whole bunch of different questions that were really about like something quite interesting that was going on here. How are people in a state that is repressing their speech, how are they responding to that? How are they thinking then when they go into the court system and this country is trying to silence them? How are they in the courtroom actually going to respond to that, right? What do you say in that moment? Part of what we also find, and it's part of why we're really interested in this, is about 95% of these end in a conviction. And so basically, if you get charged, you're getting convicted. That's where the thing goes. And so we want to know, though, what does resistance in that type of system, such a like specialized repressive system, really start to look like? Our data for this then come from a partner with OVD Info. For folks that don't know, they're doing all sorts of work, sort of keeping track of the human rights abuses that are happening there. They have about 10,000 court decisions and associated opinions on discrediting the military. So these are our evidence of what's actually happening. You see an example of what one of those looks like. It might be a little bit hard to see here, but this is the cases received over time. And two things are popping out there right away, or should be. One is, or we think are sort of fascinating. First is that there's lots of protest initially, right? This is probably where more people were seeing this in the news, that there are big protests happening. So those were happening. But if a state's being really effective with the repression, what should we see happen? We should see that number go down, right? And so the repression kicks in, and we see that number start to go down. So very depressing story right off the bat. But there's a little bit of a hopeful story here too, in the sense that you still see that people are responding, right? People are still protesting in different ways within Russia during that time period. And so we want to try and get a feel for what's happening there. But these are 10,000 Russian judicial decisions. I mean, legal language, which people don't like to code, and it's hard to code, and in Cyrillic. And so we're limited in what we could actually do with that. We've done a whole bunch of NLP stuff, other tasks to try and automate as much of this as we possibly could. But then one of the things that we also wanted to know is like, what are the defendants actually saying when they're in the courtroom? And so off of that, we had two things that I'll focus in on for today for what we're talking about. Whether or not they admit guilt, because like you can come in and you can just say, yeah, I did it, like, or do they actually show up at all? And then the second part of it is whether or not they claim some rights. And so do you have the right to sort of do the thing that you did here? Both of those are really interesting dynamics for us to try and understand, again, in this context of like a repressive state. To do this, we use Rupert, which is where the picture comes from. I thought there would be a Bert with a little Russian hat, but we ain't find one. So for folks that know, I thought we were going to get a little bit from Joe and Virginia, your talk a little bit more. I was like, I think they'll talk a lot about embeddings, and so I can back away. But it's embeddings, for folks that don't know, embeddings-based representation of Russian language, then contextualized, and then we use that in concert with these in a small neural network off of the 720 defendant statements that Lauren and a really excellent research assistant coded up. We're able to correctly predict 87% of whether or not they're admitting or not in the cases, and 85% of whether or not they're claiming rights or not. What do we find? Uh-oh, I go the wrong way. All right, so a couple of really quick things off of that. 30% just don't show up, right? You accept that you're going to get this fine. You think it's Banana Republic, whatever, so you just don't show up. You accept your fine. 53% actually admit that they're guilty, right? Well, of that 53% that admit they're guilty, you find some interesting dynamics right off the bat. 15% are claiming rights. So this is coming from the hand coded, which I'll mention now because it's going to come back to it. 15% claim rights. 25 to 33% depends on sort of how which way you put into this category. Say they were wrong to do it, but they did not intend to discredit the military. And then another chunk of these, which we have as TBD here, basically say it's a personal failing. Please go easy on them. This is like I was drunk, and so that's why this happened. Again, sort of how does a repressive state operate? This is part of the thing that we were jumping into then. The fine that you can get off of this, if you don't admit guilt, you get a higher fine. So you're gonna get heavier punishment. What does that mean for you over time as you start to learn this? More and more people start to admit guilt, and so you show up. It's just like, okay, 95% conviction rate. I'm just going to admit that I'm guilty and save myself a little bit more money. And similarly, if you claim rights, you get a higher fine. And we see the same dynamic in the opposite direction associated with those. What are we going to try and do next? Then we talked about some of the underneath here, it's like my future directions. Well, we're trying to leverage LLMs now to try and get into some of the more granular categories. We were able to use Rupert because we had enough for some of these to actually train a model to do some of those classifications. For one of the ones that are a little bit more, we just don't have tons of examples to try and train a model off of. We're going to try and see if it works through some LLMs. I'll cut myself off there though. Sorry for going a little bit over. And thanks, y'all.
We do have some time for a few more questions, or for a few questions if anyone has questions or comments.
Yeah.
I'd just be curious. I mean, I assume for Russian you can also get some sort of autoregressive, something that you can ask because it's a natural language. So while Rupert, I assume you analyze the actual embedding. So yeah. What's for something really complex like what you're doing here? What's your take on these two options?
So I might not have understood the first one. What do you mean by the
so like to interact with a LLM, you can either look at the embeddings or you can
Yeah.
chat with it.
I got you.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
assume that for Russian you have both options.
Yeah, so where I'm actually a little bit more nervous is or with the is like we'll have like 5 examples of something. And so for my general sense is that we would have better luck on that latter piece of being able to just interact with the LLM, say, here's what we're looking for, leverage all of the like historical knowledge and all the build-up knowledge that we're going to have there, just try and say, from this description that's coming out of the court, tell us if this person is admitting some level of failure, because we'll get such weirdly granular representations there that I just don't think we're going to be able to, on our end, at least get enough information out of the embeddings to try and play it forward.
Last question. Questions or comments? If not, Krista?
Go for it.
This is a fair question to ask you guys.
Anything about Russia?
It's about measurement error.
Yeah.
So as I was looking at this as a statistician, and I'm thinking about, when you have this training data, you can so clearly say, I know where my errors are. I'm wondering, and maybe this is for the room, how measurement error has a long history in statistics. How has the field of using AI in social science research been moving forward and treating the fact that we might be able to get a lot more data, but we have measurement error, and we might be able to estimate that measurement error. Are there systematic ways that that's been treated or thought about?
I can say briefly, because as this is one of like multiple projects that we have leveraging different parts where I see it going, and then hopefully other folks will jump in. The one part of what, and Jesse, I think mentioned it, one part of how we've been wrestling with it is one, the sort of human side. And so can we measure off of the human side where this, how closely we're matching up? And then off of that is the second component. Let's do this across lots of different repetitions across these to build up in sort of like a very ham-fisty bootstrapping sort of approach of, can we get some sort of measurement error estimate off of different models? Even the same model, just estimate different things. I hesitate a little bit over all that because I think where some of this is the most interesting is Art Squirreling and some others have recent work talking about the challenge that we're, I think, increasingly facing when thinking about that humans are as the benchmark are maybe fading, right? Like we shouldn't use the humans as the benchmark anymore because we think that some of these are probably, like, as a gold standard, it's just not going to operate. And so it's probably pushing more into that latter category of like, do we figuring out some way of bootstrapping across lots and lots of estimates, and if, to the extent that we're consistent, then we're getting a little bit closer.
Can I ask you what you mean by bootstrapping?
Yeah. So ham-fisty bootstrapping, but the idea being that you're going to, I guess it would be more of like permutation, but you're going to run lots of different models over this, and then build out a confidence interval over those lots of different estimates.
But then there's some assumptions about independence
Yeah,
between them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can have one comment on that. There's a number of papers that are coming out and trying to do this sort of regarding the measurement error effect of machine classifier for downstream estimates. I wrote one that no one cares about. Some people are writing better one. It's starting to come, but it's wonderful, Brenda. My impression is that this is they've not really broken out of more technical areas they're in, and you see a lot of published work that just directly uses the labels and then does all the measurements there. I feel like for these things, it's just like the methodology subfield in every social science field needs to introduce it for the social scientists. It seems to be how it's.
We can, is there one last quick? If not, then thank you, Doug, for also being in the hot seat for Krista's challenging question. Okay. So now we're gonna switch gears a little bit. And as we switch gears, I'm gonna plug that there's still lots of food in the back. There are now forks if you were previously either forkless or with a spoon. So I encourage you to get up, get some more food as we're going through this, and also still a lot of water and cider. So our next chunk of the event is we've now talked about a few different projects on campus that have been engaged in AI research with a pretty broad definition, because there are many, many different ways that AI manifests in our research. And now shifting over into engagement opportunities at UMass, both through programming and some more technical things. First up among us co-hosts for the event is the Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence.
Welcome. I'm so glad that all of you are here, and I'm thrilled that this event is happening. I'm Andrew McCallum, actually the original founder of the Computational Social Science Institute and its first director, and then founded the Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence, which I still direct today. So bringing these two organizations together is like my dream, and I'm just so glad that it's happening. I've also been a researcher for the last 30 years in machine learning and natural language processing, and for the past 10 years in large language models. And so that's another reason I'm thrilled to see these tools getting used. And it's been a wild time for me and for many of us in this field. I think when we first started doing this work, I was interested in it as an intellectual puzzle, and I hope to be able to do a little bit of good on the side if some of these methods worked. And I think none of us guessed that they would be quite as impactful and work as well as they do. And I think it's understandable that the world is going wild over both the promise and the perils of artificial intelligence, and it makes it all the more important that that both computer scientists and social scientists and multiple fields come together to understand both sides of this equation. And so with that in mind, the Center for Data Science is very happy to be supporting and trying to further accelerate both the use and the study of AI across campus. And so now I'd like to introduce Tom Bernardin, the Executive Director of the Center, to talk more about those opportunities.
Thanks, Andrew. I agree that this is such an exciting moment. I've been here a lot of years, and I've always wanted to see different people in the room, people from humanities, people from social sciences, people from natural sciences, and it feels like this AI moment is really making it happen. And it's weird, it could have happened a few years ago too. I guess AI, the zeitgeist just clicked. And so we have decided to organize what we're calling our AI and Research Accelerator program. It's designed to support people like you and engaging with AI in different ways. The first area is about learning and exploring what's happening. That's coming to events like this, where you see different people doing different things. And we have organized another set of what you might call training modules, where you can come and learn a little bit more detail about some of the things that you saw happen here today. So a first module might be about how do I use platforms to chats to do research and put in do a prompt, do prompt engineering, build an agent. We have a module on that. We have another module on how to use an API to batch process those things and sort of take it to the next level if you know how to code. And then we have more advanced modules on how do you fine tune your own neural networks, or how do you code something up in Unity, or how do you do something that's more in depth. And so those are like training opportunities. And then we're also running a seed funding opportunity where we're looking to solicit applications to have our team, our staff data scientists called Data Core, work with you on a pre-grant proposal to accelerate some of your work and make it and do the coding or do the sort of AI engineering side of things that might help make your grant proposal more exciting. Hopefully, then you would write us into your proposals to work with us in the future when you get your proposal, but that's not a requirement, it's just a desire. An example of that kind of partnership was the first talk that you saw. Virginia Patridge is a member of our staff and who works on projects like Joe's and others. And so we're looking to encourage that kind of collaboration with our center. You can check out our website for our deadlines. It's coming up, I think, in January. And in the back, Oscar Yomazel is our Director of Applied Research and Engagement, and he's the one who's really managing this program and directing that team. So please check out our website, and we're always here to answer questions and engage with folks who are interested in enabling data science and AI in their work. So thank you for coming. It's great to see you all.
If anyone has any clarifying questions or just general questions about CDSAI, sorry, all of the acronyms at UMass start to trip me up after a while. Either it's generally about who they are and what they do, or about any of the AI and Research Accelerator program this year. Now is a good time to post some of those.
If you go to our website, yes, there is.
And here we
Listserv.
can, yeah. And so here's that website again. So would encourage you to take a picture of the slide. If you signed up on the form, like registered for the event on the form, we're circulating everyone's emails to the listservs that they asked to be signed up to. So if you signed up for the CDSAI listserv, you'll be on that soon.
And one of our activities is a half an hour per week open office hour session, which I think you can sign up for. But just to private some more time to talk with some of our staff scientists. If you want to you go back and forth on some of your ideas, we'd really like to help you avoid applying to our seed program if your idea is too immature. So we'd like to have some conversations with you about, is it a good candidate, or how mature is your idea? And we could like to help you develop that idea and sort of maybe suggest that you take some of our modules before moving forward in that process. Yeah.
You said you could book or schedule a conversation with one of the people, staff at the CSSI.
Yep.
Can it just like, can the meeting just be about general questions about AI and your research?
Yes. Yeah, I think you can schedule some time to come to our office hours. If our office hours get flooded with thousands of people, we will change our policy. But until that happens, we would like to foster conversations and enable people to do more in the space. And we're going to learn from hearing from you where the need is on campus and then adapt the program to try to meet that.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Jen, you're up. So next up, we're going to hear a little bit about the AI and Us Rethinking Research Work in Society series that Social and Behavioral Sciences is putting on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for all the talks today. Really interesting, and I agree, it's great to have so many people together across disciplines. Yeah, so basically this is a series that we have going. It will probably turn into longer than just a one-year series. You can go to the website to see what our upcoming talks are, but essentially this is about what are the social impacts of artificial intelligence and what are their ramifications on society. We come very much in the various events that we have planned from a public interest technology perspective. I'd like to thank Carolina Rossini, who's running the series along with a group of faculty who have been putting the series together. And everyone is invited from across the university to these events. I welcome you to come to the website and see what's happening. I will say that today I want to give a quick plug for one of our events that is happening at 4 o'clock in the old chapel with authors, including one of our own from legal studies, Leah Wing, talking about their book called Governing Artificial Intelligence, where they'll be discussing legislation, regulation, and international standards around AI. That's 4 o'clock in the old chapel, and there will be food.
Day for eating, guys.
And then November 20th, Hilke Shellman will be here. She's author of The Algorithm, which is this really interesting, she's an investigative journalist who has looked into how AI is being used in the hiring process, as well as the employee monitoring process. You know, I know many students in particular are interested in this. A couple of highlights for what's happening next semester. We are still in the process of putting this together. We are open to ideas, so feel free to contact us. But we're right now planning on bringing in Bruce Schneier and Nathan Sanders around their recent book, Rewiring Democracy, How AI will Transform Our Politics, Government, and Citizenship. And we have an alumni panel, which many of our students will be attending, but students from across the university are welcome to. This is our alums who are working on Microsoft's Copilot to talk about related issues there. And then we have a few workshops planned, one for our advisors. I'm working with undergraduates and graduate students on career advising, given what AI means for future careers. And we have a series of teaching panels of teaching in the classroom with AI. And we're really interested. We have many faculty who are experimenting and using AI in the classroom and will be giving their pro tips at these workshops, but we also want to have students there to talk about what are their experiences in the classroom with AI, what has worked, what hasn't, et cetera. So if you have ideas or want to participate in one of these, please feel free to reach out to me. And well, that's where we are. Thank you. Are there any questions? I hope to see you at some of the events and workshops.
Again, the QR code up on the screen will take you to that, to the website for AINS. And it's a little more the formal information. With that, second, now's the alone time that tech might get totally the better of me. Our last, or our second to last of the programming talks is from ISSR. And that is going to be virtual. And so Katie is with us. Hi, Katie. You will be up on the screen in a minute. Maybe. Cool. Yeah, so the slides are now there. So they will hear you as a disembodied voice. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
But the slides are nice and large on the screen. So
Okay.
So you are set up to go, and just tell me when to switch the slides.
Okay, sounds good. Hi everyone. I am Katie Smith. So I guess you can go to the first slide, Kelsey. I'm just gonna really quickly talk about grant support and other types of support that we have here at ISSR. I am obviously not Jason or Libby, who you are currently seeing. But Jason Kamilar is our director, and Libby Sharrow is our director of faculty research. Next slide. This is our ISSR grant staff. So we provide grant support for the entire College of Social and Behavioral Sciences and anyone that is associated with ISSR, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But you can see here we have a staff of 3, myself, Carrie Morrison Penland, and B. Cusin. And the 3 of us are here to help PIs, not just faculty, but also grad students in developing proposals and developing budgets and kind of knocking around ideas in that way, and also getting you through the whole grant process. Next slide. So basically, what do we do at ISSR? We help to strengthen research skills and resources. We actually have an incredible team led by Jessica Perlman and a lot of grad students that teach various methodology workshops that are available for faculty and students, covering a host of things, including, I think today there was one on Qualtrics. So there's a lot of different things that are offered for that, and all of that information is available on our website. We also help you secure research funding, as I previously stated. We help to foster interdisciplinary collaboration. By nature, social science is a very interdisciplinary kind of world, and we can connect you with various scholars across the university and even within the college. And we can help you promote research visibility and engagement through things such as, co-sponsoring talks that you might give or bringing in a speaker, something of that nature. We kind of run the gamut in research support. Next slide. So some opportunities for faculty development. The first is ISSR Scholars. It is a year-long training that faculty apply to. And you can see Kelsey's picture there as one of our esteemed scholars. It's a year-long training cohort, and basically you walk through an entire cycle of working on a grant and then submitting that grant. You will get a course buyout for being a scholar. And it's, Kelsey could probably speak more to the benefits, but we have gotten really good feedback from faculty in that. And then our other option that's multi-session a la carte, you don't have to come to every single one, are our funding Fridays that used to be on Fridays, but now they're on Thursdays. So they're funding Fridays on Thursdays. And we cover a lot of different topics in Funding Fridays as well. Things like, maybe one week we'll be talking about foundation grants, one week we'll be talking about budget building, so on and so forth. And if you sign up for those, you also get access to the slides and materials on Canvas. And then I think I just have one slide left. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have 2 slides left. The next slide, just to let you know, we are, we really do encourage and help with interdisciplinary calls for proposals or requests for proposals. And we also help you with funding with private foundations as well. We can help you with internal funding, for example, the Spark funding from the provost. So there's a lot of different things that we are here to help you with. And then the final slide, just so that you have Jason and Libby's email address and just a few upcoming events that we're holding with ISSR. So on October 30th, we've got Funding Fridays on Thursdays. And that's going to be grant budget writing that is actually going to be led by me. And I'll walk you through the whole budget writing process. And then on Halloween, we've got ISSR methodology workshop with photo voice. And then November 3rd is another methodology workshop on data and software. So we would love to see you at any and all events. And please reach out to Jason, Libby, or myself if you have any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Katie, for zooming in for a brief presentation.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, in terms of our plugs for us various co-hosts, is us from the Social Science Institute. We just wanted to remind everyone, hopefully you've seen throughout this, they're a friendly, collaborative, and interdisciplinary space, and not just interdisciplinary within a single college, but really trying to build those bridges across the different colleges on campus. We have regular programming throughout the year that's about every other week. So for the rest of the semester, it really does follow that like every 2-week kind of schedule. Our next talk is 2 weeks today over in the Leaderly, right? Yes, we're back over in Leaderly with Yair Zik. And then we're doing a joint event with DAX on November 21st, bringing in some of the talk about From Rags to Riches, an efficient pipeline for exploratory text analysis. Then the last event for us for the season, or for the semester, is the graduate spotlight talks. And we'll hopefully soon have our spring semester schedule up and running and out there in the world. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for those who planned and for those who came and ate our food. There's still food. Please eat more food. Yeah, thank you for a great event.
You're not,